as I was saying, the Resettlement Administration loaned money to small farms. It also helped to resettle sharecroppers on productive land. This in turn helped many of the poorest individuals, such as those who were working as tenant farmers. It also replaced the FSA, the Farm Security Administration. Legitimizing labor was another major end. One of these was achieved through the Wagner Act, which was named for New York Senator Richard Wagner, which legalized the right to collective bargaining in closed shops. So let me explain what these are. Collective bargaining refers to the policy of using labor unions. In other words, instead of each worker attempting to negotiate their own wages and hours and benefits on their own with their employer, it allowed workers to bargain collectively, meaning the workers appoint an individual union representative to negotiate on their behalf. And this individual, in turn, would negotiate with the factory and company heads in order to achieve workers' rights. Basically, workers have more power when they bargain together. In other words, if you're employed by a company of several thousand employees, just you yourself, you lack a lot of power. You're one of thousands. And in their mind, it's not that hard for them to deal with the loss of one employee out of thousands. Their attitude kind of is, well, if you want to quit, go quit. We don't care. Replacing one worker out of 1,000 isn't really all that difficult. However, if all 1,000 employees were to want to bargain and threaten to leave, that's a different business. Trying to replace 1,000 employees is much more difficult than replacing one employee. So workers have more power together. And the Wagner Act said, look, collective bargaining is a legal and legitimate practice. Additionally, it legitimized what are called closed shops. What closed shop means is that a business that is closed shop refers to the idea that all members of the workforce in that business must belong to the union. Your membership in the union is conditional on you being a member of the organization. If you will not join the union, you cannot work there. That's why it's called a closed shop, because it's for union members only. Now, many states still allow closed shops, although there's been a recent movement in states, mostly in the southern United States, with what they call right-to-work laws. Right-to-work laws act in opposition to the Wagner Act and are designed to insist that workers are allowed to work in a location and are not required to join a union, even if they're not required to join the union, even though they work there. Now, this also forbids several practices. It forbids spying. Companies were not allowed to insert corporate spies into the workforce to spy on the unions. It also prevented what was called blacklisting. Blacklisting basically refers to a policy wherein union members or other individuals who were deemed agitators would be written up on a list, sometimes called a blacklist. The idea is that any employee whose name went on this list, various other companies would conspire to agree not to hire said individuals. The existence of blacklists was meant to create pressure against unions. If you were deemed to be a labor agitator, you could find yourself on one of these blacklists where employers would refuse to hire you. It also established the National Labor Relations Board, or NLRB. There was also some interesting securities that Roosevelt put in place for the children and the elderly. The Fair Labor Standard Act, among other things, banned child labor, a national policy deeming child labor illegal. Also of note was the Social Security system, which was unveiled in the 1930s. The Social Security system, run by the Social Security Administration, or SSA, had three major benefits. One was the existence of old age pensions and survivors' benefits. Now, the reason why this is important is old age pensions do a lot. One, for those Americans who are elderly and have trouble working due to health reasons, the existence of things like old age pensions help them survive and not end up falling into economic hardship during their old age. Survivors' benefits refers to benefits paid to widowed spouses, right? Spouses who've lost their significant other can still receive a portion of benefits from the government. This also is an important Social Security measure because another group of people who often experience significant economic hardships were women whose husbands were killed in factory accidents or due to long-term industrial safety hazards. The existence of survivors' benefits help these individuals not to fall through the cracks. The other important element of the Social Security Administration that isn't thought of very often in terms of its economic impact is that what it did was it actually helped to create more jobs for young people. Let me explain. When you have the Social Security system, one of the things that it does benefit with is it encourages people to retire, right? It encourages people to stop working once they reach a certain age, which in turn opens up more jobs for those who are younger. People can then, by doing this, it lets more people into jobs. Now, when the Social Security Administration first existed, it did propose its age of 65. It should be mentioned, though, this was around the average life expectancy. So retirement periods were not long. Most of the people who were retiring were already pretty close to death at this standpoint. Another major benefit of the Social Security Administration was payment of unemployment insurance. Unemployment insurance basically allowed individuals to claim a portion of their paycheck or their former paycheck while they were unemployed. Now, this only lasted for a little bit of time, and it usually was roughly commensurate, or it was based on a ratio based on how long you were employed by that employer. The longer you were employed, the longer you could collect unemployment benefits. And finally, aid to children and the disabled. Social Security also worked to pay certain stipends for poorer children as well as disabled individuals. So it was a tremendous force for good in the American economy.